When the congregation here ordained me to the Unitarian Universalist Ministry and installed me as your minister 45 years ago, God in mercy, Neil Shadle, who was then Dean of Students at Meadville Lombard Theological School, preached the installation and ordination sermon. I don't remember a thing that he said, except this, that he took as his sermon text a prayer by the 19th century British Unitarian minister, James Martineau. The prayer begins with invocation and thanksgiving. Source of all good, day by day are thy blessings renewed to us. And it ends with the words, take us now to serve thee in newness of spirit, and sweep away every dust of care, every trace of fear, every taint of an uncharitable mind. Amen. Source of all good, day by day are thy blessings renewed to us. Take us now to serve thee in newness of spirit. Sweep away every dust of care, every trace of fear, every taint of an uncharitable mind. In those brief lines lie for me the heart of ministry, the heart of true religion, the heart, although not the words, of the covenant of this Geneva congregation. They're also at the heart of what we're doing here this morning. What we're celebrating with Scot Hull will not be anything like what we had with our seminarian interns. Some of you will remember Lily and Chip, Craig, Linda, Brett, Pam, and Tom, who came to us intentionally and primarily as inexperienced students to learn from us what it means to be a religious professional within a religious UU community. And what you're going to have and continue having with Reverend Scott is not going to be like what you had with your 4 interim ministers, Dan and Jennifer and Patrick, who came to UUSG primarily intentionally as teachers to help us discover who we were growing into being and what sort of ministry we needed as this part of our congregation's history. It will not be the same as the ministry you and I shared when I was your senior minister. Things are different now, again, and they will continue to change, and that is as it should be. The relatively smooth transition got a bit bumpy when COVID arrived. That was hardly the ideal situation for a new ministry with Scott. But despite the pandemic, that new ministry began and continues. Looking back at where we have come from and all that we have been through, looking forward to where we hope we are going, even if we cannot yet clearly see the exact path, this is a time of promise and expectation and great joy. We are finally, all of us, together again. Some of us masked, some of us wondering if we should have been, some of us feeling comfortable in this community, realizing that if you didn't feel good this morning, you're at home now, trusting each other to keep one another safe. That's important, trusting each other to keep one another safe. Scott has been on a journey. UUSG has been on a journey. And now we're coming together in this place that has been in different ways home for all of us. We are rediscovering what it means to be in this community, coming together at last again in this place, at this time of both ending and beginning, looking forward to discovering it all anew as if truly for the first time. Ministry is a challenging profession. The metaphor has moved away from herding cats into herding ferrets, which will perhaps give you an idea of why so many folks are willing to say that anyone who wants to go into parish ministry in particular has to be a little bit nuts. Some years ago, our UU World magazine published the Reverend David O. Rankin's description of the basic personal characteristics and professional skills expected of the typical liberal minister. The typical liberal minister needs to drink in the pulpit, is firm but not rigid, honest but not rude, moral but not stuffy, humble but not servile, humorous but not frivolous, serious but not depressing, friendly but not superficial, clever but not scheming, prophetic but not critical of anyone. This ideal minister, Rankin continues, researches the universe, inspires the dull, comforts the afflicted, afflicts the comfortable, maintains the tradition, introduces the contemporary, reforms the society, raises the budget, arbitrates disputes, officiates at ceremonies, socializes with ease, stays awake at every meeting. In the typical liberal church, this paragon faces a long list of expectations that become even more specific and contradictory. The ex-Catholic expects more authority. The ex-Episcopalian expects more ritual. The ex-Lutheran expects more devotion. The ex-ethical humanist expects more discussion. The ex-Baptist expects more zeal. The ex-Presbyterian expects more theology. The ex-Quaker expects more silence. The ex-Methodist expects more singing. And the list continues. The executive expects an efficient administrator. The professor expects a learned scholar. The social worker expects a fine listener. The banker expects a wise economist. The nurse expects a gentle healer. The salesman expects a high-powered fundraiser. The artist expects a sensitive poet. The activist expects a harsh social critic. And as creatures of habit and subconscious desires, some congregants expect their father or their mother. Some expect a childhood minister. Some expect Jesus. Can you pull that off? Or Socrates. Some expect the qualities of a predecessor, and as another colleague commenting upon Rankin's list noted, there are also some who will not tolerate any of the same qualities as in a predecessor, as well as those who expect never to be disappointed in their expectations, which is a large and challenging group. And all of that is absolutely true. And if that were all that was involved in the professional ministry, exhibiting those traits, demonstrating those impossible skills, meeting those dreaded expectations, there would not be very many ministers. But doing isn't being. It's not a list of actions and attributes that creates a minister. What makes a minister in our tradition is a balance of competency, which does describe what one does and how well one is able to do it, and authenticity, which describes who one is, what inner resources one calls upon to justify the special combination of arrogance and humility, of courage and idiocy, of confidence, determination, and faith, which are all required if one is to be a minister. And finally and essentially, there is the authority of the covenant, the authority both recognized and bestowed by the community of faith, by the Church Universal as embodied within a local Unitarian Universalist congregation. Ministry is not a job, with a specific list of tasks to be recognized and done. Specific tasks do, of course, exist, but the mere doing of them does not constitute a ministry. Ministry is not the inner feeling of commitment or desire that some may call the sense of vocation, although that sense of a call must also be present. Ministry is about living within a covenant. It is about deep agreements of heart and mind and will. It is about promises made in faith and in trust about how we will walk together. Ministry is about the relationships, the promises, the commitments, the covenant, a word we cannot say too often. The covenant within which one strives to respond to, and the covenant which helps us to accomplish those tasks, not for the sake just of the local and the particular, but in service to the ultimate, to what Martineau called the source of all good. For us, that service is within our communities, our groups, our institutions, primarily our congregations. I believe that the clergy's special work is the nurturing of religious institutions. It is our job, it is our calling to care deeply about and work knowledgeably within the formal structures that embody our faith. For Unitarian Universalists, our faith is not so much about particular theologies, although there are statements of belief some of us are willing to make, and they do matter. But it's more about how we demonstrate to ourselves, to each other, and to the world how what we believe matters, not only within, but also beyond, far beyond, our own protective walls. The words of two of our own come to mind here. James Luther Adams, one of Unitarian Universalism's strongest 20th century voices, wrote that freedom, justice, and love require a body as well as a spirit. We do not live by spirit alone. A purely spiritual religion is a purely spurious religion. It is one that exempts its believer from surrender to the sustaining, transforming reality that demands the community of justice and love. This sham spirituality is the great enemy of religion. And another Unitarian theologian, Henry Nelson Wyman, commented that personal commitment without institutional help in a society complex, powerful, and tightly interdependent is not very effective. Unitarian Universalist clergy devote our lives to nurturing the faith that is incarnate in our congregations, our area councils, our regions, and our wider UU Association as well. And we approach these institutional incarnations not as not-for-profit corporations, not as social service providers, not as social justice agencies, but as communities, specifically as covenanting communities. And that's the heart of it all, the concept and the reality of covenant, the intentional creating and maintaining of a particular kind of community. Go back to our own Geneva Covenant. If you remember your high school grammar, you'll note that it is one sentence. It's a run-on sentence. But the heart of it, the main clause, is simply, we have associated ourselves together. All the rest are phrases modifying that basic affirmation. The heart of the covenant, the heart of any covenant, is the reminder that we have chosen to walk together, to be a community. The promise that when things get rocky, and they will in any group of people who are honest with one another, we can handle any disagreement so long as our actions, our words, our ways of being together all remain in harmony with our promise to be seekers together after truth and goodness. Our Free Church covenants speak not of specific doctrines, but rather of underlying values: goodness, truth, love, justice, respect, freedom, peace, and of being together in the ongoing quest to live those values. The covenantal formula is very simple. Essentially, it says, we freely promise each other that we will remember and act upon the knowledge that we are indeed all in this together. We know that none of us can go it alone. That's why we have our congregations, our area councils, our regions, our various special interest groups, and trying to hold us all together, the Unitarian Universalist Association. And that's what professional ministry is about, reminding all of us of what all of us should already know, calling us repeatedly back to those core values, those deep truths about how best to be in community when we are tempted, individually or collectively, to go chasing after the diversions, the amusements, the deceptions, the anesthetizing comforts of the rest of the world. Covenants do tend to be rather vague general statements, but what would it mean? What does it mean to take seriously what they say? The beloved community of the Free Religious Covenant is here to help us do that, to help us dream our best selves, our best societies, our best world, and then live those dreams into reality. And when those of us who work in the pulpits are doing our jobs, cajoling and encouraging and infuriating and inspiring those who take seriously the work to be done in the pews, then we are indeed working together to change and to save ourselves, our own communities, and ultimately even the world. We are unlikely to achieve perfection, but we will keep moving toward that goal. And our covenant with Scot is simply one more very important step along our journey. I think I can trust you with them. I think I can trust you with him. Blessed be. My turn to charge the congregation. And I've already said most of what I want to say this morning, so let this be a relatively brief addendum to the homily. Beloved, we are one of very few congregations still honoring our foundational covenant. Ours is one of the very few that have stood the test of time, requiring only minor changes to remain relevant. Honor our covenant. Live our covenant, not just within the walls of this church and its activities, but in your own daily life as well. It's not just for Sunday morning recitation. The promotion of practical goodness in the world is a 24/7, 365 effort. And holding one another gently but firmly accountable in the quest for moral and religious improvement is challenging but essential in an increasingly challenging and often angry world. Strive for consensus, but remember that differences of opinion are opportunities for learning and for growth, for better understanding one another, for strengthening the bonds of fellowship and community that transcend disagreement. We will never attain universal truth and belief, so avoid the arrogance that thinks it has all the answers. And we will never attain perfection in character, so don't demand it of others. Be daily seekers after truth and goodness. And remember the one and only commandment. Those who know me didn't think I could get through this without reminding you of that one, did you? The great commandment that God gave to Miriam in that midrash that some of you have heard, perhaps ad nauseum from this pulpit. Very simple. Thou shalt not other. We still need to work on that one, my friends, and it is not easy. If anyone in your community feels unheard or discounted, if someone reports that they do not feel safe within these walls, you have an obligation to explore that, to hear their experience and not discount it or ignore it. Othering is not always obvious. There may be a clash of valid expectations. There may also be unintended incidences of failing to take lived experience into account. I know that you are now intentionally working on this, and I'm glad to see those efforts. Take the work of your diversity, equity, and inclusion team seriously. Do the hard work of learning not to other. And when you fail, take a deep breath and start again. And remember finally that despite all that you have seen and heard, still Scot Hull is not the perfect minister. The perfect minister does not exist. And you, my beloved, are not the perfect congregation. The perfect congregation doesn't exist either, alas. But that doesn't mean you can't strive for perfection, all of you individually and together. On the overall scale of healthy congregations, you have been, and I expect you will continue to be, one of the good ones. But don't sit on your laurels. Keep doing the joyful, difficult work of building the beloved community, where, in the words of Josiah Royce, there are no strangers, none against whom doors are shut and harsh words spoken. For they who belong to it are bound together in one living body, apart from which there is no life. You can do this. Blessed be.
Visit us at UUSG.org.